thank you all so much for making this wonderful movie. I think it's so impressive at how consistently great the Into the Dark films are. We have a great group of people together. You've already met Tyler, you've met Aaron and Will. Let's welcome on executive producer and star Judy Greer.
Wait, I also have this. My little terrorist mix, Mary.
Hi, Mary.
Mary.
We've got Francine over here.
And Arla's in the house.
I don't have a dog, but I did get this guy just to kind of
Sleep with one eye open with that guy.
So I want to just mention for everyone out there that's watching that you can throw questions into the Q&A box, and when we open it up, we'll take questions from you guys. Just, I guess very quickly, I'm always impressed by the approach to the time of the year and the various holidays that Into the Dark tackles. And I'd love to know a little bit about the process of, you know, how a film gets chosen to represent a particular holiday. Was this an idea that you guys had, or did you get approached by Blumhouse Television to make something specifically for pets?
No, we took it to them because when Aaron and Will wrote it, that was my first thought. I had just finished shooting Halloween, or I was about to start shooting. I forget, but I must have finished Halloween. Anyway, I took it to them and it just seemed like a perfect fit for Blumhouse. So they were the ones that were responsible for figuring out where to put it. They were like, we'll put it with the Pet Appreciation Day. That'll work.
And Pet Appreciation Day, not the first holiday I think of in June.
No. We were like, I know Father's Day is in June, but come on, they've done a Father's Day. Why not bring our friends in here?
There's some like pet holiday on the internet every month, it seems. So why not pick the one in June? You know?
Yeah, I mean, Into the Dark season 3, you'll have National Donut Day. There'll be a big donut monster, like Pizza Day. The holidays are just going to get more and more outlandish.
It would be amazing if they're never allowed to repeat a holiday.
Right.
You get to November or Christmas, you know, it's like, nope, you burned through that in season 1.
National Lipstick Day. We have the lipstick killer.
So how did you guys cast Ruben? Where did Chico come from?
Tyler.
I mean, it was a bit of a search. Like we definitely, that was a big kind of hole, like production wise, when we were having our kind of earliest meetings. We always kind of left the dog discussion till the end, and then it was just kind of like, and this dog needs to be on point or else we're screwed, and so Tevin really kind of, who's one of our EPs, really headed up the search for it. And so he was fielding vetting all sorts of different types of, because you have to meet the trainers and the dogs at the same time, obviously, because you're interacting with the trainer. And then, he kind of looked at, hundreds of dogs in the LA area, because there's a lot of show dogs, and we knew we needed one that was a little smaller and kind of, terrier-esque, but we didn't, necessarily, have a specific thing in mind. So we ended up, I ended up getting like a list of, I don't know, like maybe 6 or something. And I literally opened up and I was like, Chico, because he had he had that kind of adorable, thing on his eye. And I knew that he'd be kind of specific, like when we did the monster version, that he'd have like some markings that were, indicative of that dog that we could kind of recreate. And then we brought in some other ones and met, and Chico was the first one we met. And then we met 3 or 4 other ones, and we kept coming back to Chico because he was just, like, as soon as we met him, like, he was, it was in an office environment, everyone's in prep, and then they're like, the dog's here, and so then pretty soon there's like 30 people gathered around this dog, and he's just like laser focused, like on the trainer, and we're just like having discussions, and he's super chill, and I was like, oh, this is like what he's like on set, and I guess he's been doing it for quite a while, like he's a rescue dog originally, and then he kind of got trained up, and has become like one of the most sought after kind of working dogs in LA. And
he's actually the face of Pet Finder. pet.com. So if you like go on the Pet Finder website, you'll see like in the banner, it's like the murder dog from the movie. But it's like all yours.
He's more famous than I am now.
He reminded me of like a small version of Matisse from Down and Out in Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
You guys remember that?
I do. Yeah, I mean, yeah, he was great. And so like, I mean, he just loves being on set too. That's the other thing. Like, you know, so it was cool to kind of like he doesn't realize it's work, which is awesome.
Yeah, I've never been so impressed as I was when I saw Chico have to hold a piece of beef in his mouth and not eat it, because I couldn't do that, you know, much less a dog.
Yes, evolution has not trained us to hold food in our mouths without swallowing it.
Yeah.
I heard there was a fun story about Judy, about you getting involved in the project to begin with.
Yeah, like a slight stocky story. Just kidding, guys. I was, no, not really. I was walking my little dog near my house by a cafe, and these two young men ran out after me screaming my name. So immediately I'm like, who's around? What do I like have to sort of like, you know, take in my surroundings. They come up to me, they're like, we're not crazy. I swear to God, we're writers. They're represented by my management company. So they were like, you can call and ask about us. I swear to God, but this is so crazy. You're walking by with a little dog. We're talking about writing this script, like this horror movie. They kind of like loosely pitched it. This is my memory of it anyway. You guys correct me if I'm wrong. They kind of loosely pitched it, but I was like, okay, it does sound really awesome, and I do sound totally perfect for it. But like, probably we should like have our teams talk to each other. And then when they wrote it, and I read the script, it was so good. Like we immediately clicked, and the script was so incredible. And the only thing that we really did before sending it to Blumhouse, the three of us, was decide if we wanted to like make it more of a comedy or more of a horror. And then what was so great about having Tyler come on to direct it is that like Tyler is a genius at sort of threading that line of comedy horror. So we got the tone totally perfect because of Mr. Tyler MacIntyre. Thank you, Tyler.
Very, very sweet of you. I'm just glad that Aaron and Will didn't get maced or something, you know.
I know. Well, I do carry it now since that happened. So thanks, guys.
Yeah. I remember it very similarly, but I remember Judy was holding a box. She was like, do you want to walk with me? Like, I have to like mail this box.
Oh yeah, because my mailbox is near my house because I have a mailbox because I'm an actor and that's what we're supposed to do. So yes, I was carrying a box and I'm like, okay, this is awkward. But yeah.
Well, the only other change I would add to the story was that Aaron can't help himself. He has to talk to every dog at the coffee shop. So he started talking to Mary Richards, then finally looked up with his eyes and it was Judy, and he was like, oh, Judy Greer. And then like, oh God, I was mortified. I saw it was Judy immediately, and I was like, geez. But I'm glad he did.
That sounds more familiar.
Yeah, I remember Will giving me eyes like while we were talking, of just like, all right, man, let's up. And I was like, 1 second.
So wait, was your dog at least given the dignity of a screen test?
No one even asked. No one even, well, I think probably because early on, I'm covering her ears right now. I think I told them all how she would not be great on a set, and she was very much like the character of Ruben, unfortunately for my husband. And like, it was why their idea was so funny because my little rescue pup over here, she doesn't really like people to be near me or around me or get in bed with me or anything. So it makes my husband's life a little challenging, but you know what? We're up for the challenge.
Let's talk a little bit about the tone, because the Into the Dark series does have so many films that have a very great balance of comedy and horror. And, you know, it's not necessarily the model for every single one of them, but I am curious to know a little bit about working with the Blumhouse team to really sort of figure out the template that works for Into the Dark, if that's even something that they, you know, they specifically like look for, or if they just give you sort of freedom to write what makes sense for you.
That is a you guys question. I felt like we were just making a movie from where I was working. It wasn't like, oh, we don't do that at Into the Dark. It was like, we're making this film that is for Into the Dark. But maybe you guys experienced differently, Tyler. Well,
yeah, I came in like with the script already, you know, like existing, which is, I think usually they hire sometimes writers or directors write the scripts as well, but in this case, obviously you guys had already had it underway, so it was kind of like a spec script that was then brought to them and then put into the Dark. And I think they kind of picked it partially because they hadn't quite done anything like it, like it had, they do have some kind of like super dark horror movies, and then they have some ones that have some comedy in them as well. But like at this point in the series, like there's been such a variety of stories. We didn't get a lot of pressure about like trying to push the tone one way or another. Like it was kind of where you guys kind of established it. And then I had to kind of pitch on, like what was in line and how to kind of balance that. And like, how do we make this work? Like, cause, often like with horror comedies, and, I've done 3 of them now, where, like you have to kind of leave yourself options. Like when you're shooting, you have to shoot something that's maybe a little sillier and then something that's a little darker. And then you have to kind of like balance it in the editing to make sure that you don't kind of, fall one way or the other or get too many, it doesn't get too dark or too silly or whatever, in any given moment. And I think you guys kind of had like most of the work kind of done, on the page. And then I just tried to kind of, make it logistically possible to do it. And they didn't really, pressure us, like the Into the Dark way, is more kind of like, it has to do with like more like resources and like the number of days and things like that. And like you can only do a certain number of company moves and things like that. And you have to just kind of try and maximize and make it as cinematic as you can under those constraints. And that becomes the challenge. But creatively, I thought they were quite supportive, like with the tone,
Mm-hmm.
I felt like with like Blumhouse in general seems to be like, I've done 3 movies for them now, and I love how they, business-wise, they have, plans, but like creatively, I've always felt like have at it, which I like.
And
a little rare, by the way.
Oh, very rare. Sorry, if you're not familiar with making films or TV shows, although you're going to be because you're students. It's crazy rare.
I'm curious to know a little bit about the horror moments in the script and how precisely was that executed, or did you have to work around certain things like going with more practical effects than special effects done, digitally?
Yeah, they were definitely like it was kind of written like leaning away from seeing the monster version of the dog until like later in the and it kind of became pretty apparent that it wasn't going to be ready till like kind of late in the schedule anyway. So we knew that we had to kind of jaws it up a little bit in terms of like trying to create suspense or find other ways that scenes could be dramatically kind of interesting. But yeah, we were trying to go as practical as possible. There's very few digital effects in the movie, and just more with cleaning up like the practical effects because you're
her nose.
Quick.
Oh yeah, Annie's nose getting big.
Annie's nose.
Yeah, like even like like Ellen Wong when Annie's nose gets like bit off and you see it in Chico's mouth, like that's like a digital like kind of effect, like she had like a white or blue nose and then it was taken off digitally.
The blood was real.
But yeah, the blood was real. We wanted that to be, and Judy was such a sport too, like get in there and just like, like that's, and it was, I'm sure it wasn't comfortable. It's probably very sticky.
Oh, it was great.
But, sorry.
There was a ton of blood, yes. I was just going to say from a writing point of view, the challenge was like, in our original draft, we had more horror moments. We had some more action-y kind of sequences with the dog. We saw him a little bit more, but it was like the challenge was, we have to make this work in 16 days. We have to set up Tyler for success. So a lot of that stuff had to go. And so really it was like, leaning into the character piece of it all and making sure that the characters and story were working so that even if we couldn't get all of these awesome set pieces in, the few ones would really work well and people would still be invested in the story.
And then I would also say that like the big help for us on the Blumhouse end is that Will and I are comedy writers through and through. We came at this as comedy writers. This was our first genre movie, our first genre kind of like cross-pollination. And so comedy and horror have very similar beat structures and very similar rhythms and kind of music. There are ways where things work, and then there are ways where it just feels off. Blumhouse is really helpful with like the scares, and then Tyler also, Tyler got his start before directing as an editor, and so Tyler knows like the musicality of it from multiple angles. And then Judy's done a lot of comedy and a lot of horror. So like we were all very set up for success with like the team that was, that was assembled.
Mm. I love how Judy, your character has agency, which differentiates this from like something like Cujo, where the dog is just sort of like evil. It's an externalization of your trauma and your anxiety, but then you do choose at some point to lean into that. And, even if eventually, sort of backtrack it. And I really like that character choice. I'm curious how you guys all sort of felt about going in that direction.
I would just say I mostly did what Tyler told me to do. That was on the page. I mean, that scene is so well written, and it's such a strong moment for her. And I love that it kind of happens. I love that it happens towards the end of the film. It's like such an aha moment, and we see like what Ruben knew all along. Like usually it's like the girl sees the guy and she's like, oh my God, you were right under my nose, like in the romantic comedy, and then they kiss and the movie's over. Like that's the same moment, really. It's just that he rips the throat out of her boyfriend, and then she has to go to jail, which is totally unfair, by the way. I mean, I guess she did cover up the murders, but anyway, so that's kind of like the end of the romantic comedy moment.
Well, we were thinking about kind of who the antagonist in the movie is when we started, and it's like the antagonist is actually the cute dog, but it takes two to tango, and we wanted the relationship between Maggie and Ruben to be somewhere between mother and child, and also Bonnie and Clyde. Like as the movie goes on, Judy's character gets more and more complicit. Not only is this dog, doing favors that kind of, make her social life better and bring success to it, but then she starts kind of targeting people, and they become almost, these outlaws together.
And that was part of the excitement of the project in the first place was, and part of the excitement of bringing Judy on was seeing her play against type. She's a very, she really lets us empathize with her, and she's always likable, and it was just so fun.
Well, that was like the first thing that when we had our first conversation with you, Judy, you were like, I don't want to sound like the reason I like this, and I don't want to sound weird, is that like a lot of people like me, you know what I mean? And it's true. It's like Judy, when you think about Judy, she's like the perfect friend and companion and very chipper, but it's great to see kind of what's like something that's been festering under the surface,
what lies beneath. Yes.
I'm curious if you've ever had experience with emotional support animals. I mean, it's obviously used to very good effect in this film. My dog stresses me out a lot, so I would say like like in the movie I'm her emotional support human, probably. I've seen emotional support animals out in the world, and sometimes they don't seem very supportive, and I'm always curious about that designation with an animal, because I know I know that my dog isn't great at that, and that I could just write and get like a certificate and it wouldn't matter. We've had audience members who come to USC sometimes with the emotional support dogs, and they have been the sweetest animals I've ever met.
They are lucky.
Yeah.
Both. Yes, that's good.
Mary? I have an emotional support dog that I like, and this kind of came from like the genesis of the script was like my psychiatrist prescribed, was like kind of said exactly what Steve's character says to Judy in the movie, just like, you can pet them if you're feeling anxious. And I was like, I know how dogs work. But it's true. Like, I got Francine about 6 years ago because I was having a particularly bad bout of anxiety, and I needed something to kind of like put my care into that was outside of my own head. And so they're not always cuddly. Like, Judy, you're right. Like, but they're good for you.
Yeah,
like,
but they're a distraction from, like, regardless, like they're a distraction from your inner turmoil and angst and fear and depression.
Yeah, and people don't seem clear, like the landlord's character, Maria Conchita Alonso's character. It's like, well, why do you have a dog? Like, you're not blind.
Right.
And frankly, I get questions like that when I'm at the airport. People just don't realize that there is like personal boundaries, and they're like, so what's the dog for? You know, you don't look like you're like bumping into walls or anything. So it's like, the dog's for none of your business.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah,
Legally as well, you know, you're not allowed to ask.
You can't ask. Okay, Trader Joe's?
Oh, Francine goes to Trader Joe's?
Francine likes that cauliflower gnocchi.
Does she
That
have to
sounds-
wait
that
in
sounds
line
like
as long
people.
as everyone else?
No, they kind of get her right through the quick pay.
I mean, just Francine walking into Trader Joe's at the beginning of the stay-at-home orders when all the pasta was gone.
That's right.
It's just,
She took all the last rolls of toilet paper, just like Ruben does.
I know it.
Was there anything that was difficult for Chico to actually do?
No. Was there?
He's kind of amazing. Like that was the. Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things. Like, I mean, out of the box, he has like something like 50 tricks that he can do that he's like quite familiar with, and a lot of them are really practical. Like as in they put like, you know, they have like an extender kind of thing with like a little you know, like a treat on the end of it that they can, like, you know, put, and he'll just look at it like dead stare. You know, so if you need like an eye line for, like, you know, camera direction or whatever, like, it's a very practical thing that they do to kind of figure it out. But then
I'm gonna get one. For me.
You do that at like Sears when you get the family photographs too.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, and there were a couple of custom things. Like it was really tough to get him to like squat as if he was gonna poop. You know, like that was a whole training thing where he had to, like, they essentially trained him to like sit on a little stick, like a little stool, and then we digitally removed the stool. It's a weird, like, that was the weirdest one. I was like, really? That's the challenge. Like the squatting. That's interesting to me. And then like, you know, like, and like the nipple gag at the end of it was probably the most difficult. Like that was just a whole.
Those were not my nipples, by the way. That was those were fake nipples it was a dummy nipple.
Yeah, stunt nipples, dummy nipples.
They were stunt nipples.
I hope that was written into your contract when you read the script.
Half of the Blumhouse budget went
Remember.
to the stunt nipples.
The stunt.
The nipple budget was really quite
It was inflated.
Well, yeah, but it was not in his like, you know, wheelhouse of tricks to like, you know, appear to suckle the nipple versus like lick it or just do whatever else. So we ended up kind of like having this peg thing that he like would bite onto, and it just sort of worked out. But yeah, that
Like,
was.
you recall the dog trainer finding us on set that morning and going, "You guys have us do the craziest shit." And I was like, "What do you mean?" They're like, "Oh, he's sucking on the nipples today." Okay.
Yeah.
Will, I'm guessing that stunt nipples were never covered in any SC classes. I'm curious to know.
No, that was new for me. You guys got to add that to the curriculum. This one of the scariest moments of making this movie was writing that scene and then sharing it with everybody else. It was just the reaction alone. It's like, did they read it? Nobody's commented. Do we know? Is that on the schedule? I'm glad that it worked.
What's your process of writing together?
So usually we in the beginning of the process, we're brainstorming together. Either one of us has an idea, and then we kind of just spitball and kind of go back and forth. And then our outlining process, we're always literally in the same room, except for right now, obviously. And there's a lot of conflict there. We're trying to break it together. It's a lot of back and forth, and we wind up working out a very detailed outline together so that by the time it's finished, We know exactly what's happening in every scene, and we can split up the scene. So he can take like the first 3, I take the next 3. We write, we switch them, we revise, we send them back, revise, and we basically keep doing that process for sequence after sequence until basically it's all approved.
Yeah.
And so
we
have
like the nice thing about having like a co-writer is that you have an editor kind of built in. So your first draft is not like a first draft that nobody else's eyes are on. You know, we try to make our first draft, especially knowing that we were going to like hand Judy like a hard copy like from Kinko's. Like we wanted to make sure that
FedEx office now.
That excuse me. I'm not up with the modern lingo, but we knew like we wanted to make it as airtight of a first draft as possible. But there's a lot of like passing back.
I'm curious a little bit because this is a series. I mean, it's an anthology, but it's still a TV series. Tyler, how are you working with producers? Is it the same team that's making each one of these, or unique producers to the project?
Yeah, it's the same team generally speaking. There's like Alex and Lauren kind of switch off, like where they're kind of like the lead producer on each episode. So ours was Alex, but then Lauren had the one before and after. Mm-hmm. But then like Tevin and Scott, like who are the other people in the producing side of things, like they were very much like involved in everything, and so they're prepping an episode and episodes in post, and they're also like shooting an episode at any given time. And so we I definitely think that there was a little bit of continuity, but even though each story is kind of independent, they have to make sure that like the resources are being spread somewhat intelligently and like to be honest, like I always I think I always think that there's a bit of a with a lot of like directors, you're always kind of like asking for more, like, and I think they had a really good sense of trying to like like kind of bringing our expectations kind of like gradually down and did a good job of kind of like helping us rethink things, and so like I think it was creatively quite like we all melded pretty well, I thought, but at the same time, like we're not trying to have a lot of like there's no continuity between these episodes, like but at the same time, like it's the same creative team. So like Eve, who's our production designer, like love to put like little Easter eggs from other like episodes and things like that. Like at one point, Ruben's wearing these pajamas and they're like puka patterned, and like Puka's was the Christmas episode from the first season. And then like there was like all those articles at the Valley Yeller have something to do with other episodes. Like they're all kind of like there's one about crawlers and one about the My Valentine and whatever. And I think we have a song for My Valentine. So like there's a little bit of kind of like shared universe stuff going on, but even though it's not like official.
That's funny because it was our only episode. The crew was having so much fun seeing all the stuff on set and like they were telling me anyway, like, oh, that's from this and this is from that, and that was really cute. I like that.
Okay, so I want to go over to some questions from the audience, and I do something that's a little bit unusual for Zoom webinars, and I'm just going to say this to the people out there. If you're camera ready, I really like to bring the individual person asking the question over into the panelist side so that they can ask their question live. It's worked great so far. So if everyone gives the thumbs up on that, I'd like to invite Hester, who has some questions. And basically, Hester, I'm going to switch you over. And then when you pop up on our side, you're welcome to turn on your video. I can't force your video on because of laws, but if you're not camera ready, you can just turn on your microphone and ask. Okay.
Suspense.
Shot.
This is exciting.
Okay. I was not anticipating the camera.
Okay.
But okay, I'll repeat. I actually had, I think 3. I was just typing one when you made that announcement, the third one. The first was, and someone answered it, in the meantime was if the decision not to show dog to teeth and dog teeth to human and the Munster dog, a creative decision for suspense, a budget decision, just wondering what the original script was like. But as I said, you somewhat answered that in the interim.
Great.
Do you want to bring up any of your other
One
questions?
for one.
The second one was, how long did it take between you submitting the script or pitching it to Blumhouse and getting it greenlit?
It was fast, but I don't remember.
It was August when we officially pitched and sold the script to Blumhouse. We got on set in January.
Yeah.
And then the movie came out in June. So that's like pretty wild in terms of like movie making.
Yeah.
That is a kind of crazy fast turnaround that is probably helped by making a movie in 16 days.
Yeah.
But I will say that it was even crazier than that, because we had written it on spec, and when we brought it to them, they greenlit it when they bought it. So like we knew that when we were giving it to them, they were slotting it for this June release for the January production. That's the whole thing about Into the Dark, is that they have to be shooting these movies. So that was a really unique experience as a writer, is like
they throw you onto like a moving escalator in a very nice way.
It's great. But yeah.
So when they did this, did they say, okay, we'll do this and you've got X million dollars to make it?
So many millions.
That number?
You have 200 million to make it. Right?
Well, not quite. Like they say we're going to greenlight your movie as part of our Into the Dark series, and then like they bring their own producers. I'm probably the most likely person to have seen a budget, as a director, EP, I guess. But I didn't even see one, because they've got everyone. They've got it all kind of managed. Like Scott Fort does a really good job keeping the resources that you have kind of like on track, and we had very little kind of pushback. But it's not like a Netflix situation where they kind of I think that's a little bit more like if you sell a project to them, then you can either be paired with a production company, and then it's just kind of like, here's a check, go write the movie, or go make the movie. Whereas this is they already have kind of like these slots that you're kind of fitting in, and with that comes the people on the production side.
Okay, and,
I would add also.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to add that as soon as we sold it and it became official, Aaron and I got an email that was like, okay, we've broken down your script. You have like 40 locations. Typically, these episodes have 5 locations. You have 30 characters. Typically, we have 4 to 7. So it was like, then the work really began to make it fit the parameters.
What was the biggest change that you made?
The biggest change that we made was kind of actually something that happened very late into the process. I would say like only a week out before shooting, is that we got rid of an entire line of backstory about Ruben. You remember this, Tyler?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, and it's funny because I brought it up a number of times since then. But yeah, it was like Marcy actually brought it up like after the table read. We did a table read with most of the cast, and then there was kind of this like there was this different opening, a very different opening that took place like it was period, like it was in the 60s.
Early 60s, yeah, with a dog catcher that dies.
Yeah,
Dog catcher that died.
Yeah, and then that led to like a much more like specific like origin story and like explanation of the dog, and why it was a monstrous, and then we realized like after the table read, Marcy very wisely pointed out like that, or Marcy and Jeremy both, very wisely pointed out that like, guys, like you don't really need it. Like the metaphor of like the dog being part of, a part of her anxiety, and like that's stronger than this explanation, which we don't need. Like no one's screaming for that, weird exposition, and then it just kind of.
And that was so helpful for us too, because again, I think that we were probably trying to cater a little bit to what we thought Blumhouse might want. They're so good with horror. And then we thought, okay, well then if it's Blumhouse, like let's start with a big scare up top. And it actually was, to our benefit that it's like, let's start with Judy. and let's start with beautiful, wonderful Judy, and like let's ease into the scares. Let's kind of turn the movie on its head.
Well, it worked.
Thanks.
And speaking of beautiful, wonderful Judy, is this your first? Yeah, yes. Is this your first film where you've also had producing credits? And if so, was that experience different from you being an actress and a producer?
I don't know the answer, honestly. I can't remember if I've produced a TV pilot before. I don't think I've produced a movie before. Sometimes when you're doing independent film, not this, but like a true indie, they'll give you a producer credit. But I can't remember if that's happened to me, like as like enticing actors to do movies. And I would say that I didn't really do much executive producing. But I brought it to Blumhouse, so that's why I get that cool title, you know, like
Judy, don't sell yourself short though. Like you really did like powwow with us for the script, like
well, a little bit, but we did like a few notes, and then I brought it to Blumhouse. So it was really fun though. Once the team gets assembled, there's not a ton I felt like I needed to do. And honestly, truly, it's more important for me to worry at that point about my performance than about like whatever else, like that's my real job as an executive producer lead, is to like be good in it. So
yeah, well, I mean, I think you're kind of selling yourself short a little bit, Judy, because you're like, I just planted the tree, or planted the seeds and watered it, and then this tree showed up. And,
yeah. Well, thank you, Tyler.
So we have one of your fabulous co-stars that wants to come and say hi. So let's welcome.
I feel like this is your life or something.
Maria, if you're out there.
Hey!
We're bring on Maria Conchita Alonso. And again, camera ready, hopefully. And you're welcome to turn it on.
Oh my God, Maria.
Anticipation is coming.
Oh,
This
she's
is
on
fun.
mute.
You're on our side of things.
Oh, she's on here.
I don't want to, I'm not sure if this is fair, but let me unmute you, Maria, and you can mute me. You can mute it right back if you don't want to be heard. Oh, I guess because of
Can you guys see me?
Hi,
Maria.
Let me ask you to turn on your video.
Can you see me?
no.
We can hear
Okay,
you.
let's see.
Hey!
Oh, with her.
She has a dog too. Great.
Yeah, that's Cookie.
Cookie.
Oh, you guys, so good to see you.
It's so good to see you. Hi.
You were fantastic. Everybody was.
You're so fantastic. How about you in that bathtub with your organs everywhere? You were such a good sport.
Listen, after doing all that, I wish I could have seen myself more. Okay, Mr. Director. I mean, all like dying, all of everything out, and then you don't even see it.
Hey, well, didn't want it. It was too shocking. It was too.
Go down.
No, my cousin, come here. He's like, you should have been there more in that dead thing, because I wanted to. And then he says, well, maybe not, because why did you say maybe not?
What?
When we're talking about being more in the dead scene, and then you said, well, maybe not, because.
Yeah, I saw her, and it was like this, like a moment. I got it in my mind like a flash. And it's okay because you know what you did, but I wanted to see her more dead.
No, but he just said that flash, maybe, he kept it inside of him. And then maybe if you would have seen more, that wouldn't have stayed inside of him.
Oh.
That's what he said. It was just like a, so that's why you wanted to see more. I wanted to see more because it was me.
By the way, let me tell you something. Congratulations to all of you.
Thank you.
Yes, and it was amazing because it had that little comedy, but it was like horror movie, but it was, oh my God, amazing. And Judy, you are amazing.
Thank you.
Wow, you are amazing,
Thank you.
amazing, amazing. You guys were correct, right? Choosing her like the lead character.
Everything.
And Maria.
That was not a hard decision.
I love
Writing,
this Q&A.
editing. We were really enjoying it with popcorn and ice cream. We ate all the ice cream and and tequila.
That's it. You're making a float.
And hold on a second.
Oh,
Toddy from Venezuela.
It's a powdered chocolate that we added to the ice cream.
Smart.
Oh, and something else too.
Somebody's partying.
This is
It was so good.
Yes.
Congratulations.
We really
Thank
enjoyed
you.
it. So how much longer is it going to be on the air, or however you say it now?
Yeah, it should be on Hulu for the foreseeable future. I mean,
Yeah,
the whole series
forever.
up there, yeah.
right.
So I was going to say, okay, I just became a Hulu person just to see this.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to say hi. Are you guys going to do it? What's going on with you guys and working situation?
Oh, we don't work.
I know.
Yeah.
I think we're all
Adam,
waiting
I'm
until
gonna hug my
after
dad.
COVID to get back into production, but things are slowly,
Yeah.
very slowly getting back to I think there's new guidelines, but we're working towards it.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, I send you all a hug. And this,
Oh,
I mean, we have a show every Thursday at 5 o'clock. But today was at 3 because we were interviewing someone from Spain.
Oh.
So you have to make it earlier for them. And that's why I'm all made up and the light and all the stuff. If not, I wouldn't have had to make
Hey, it worked out well.
you look beautiful.
it.
Great to see
Thank
you.
you guys, hugs.
Bye. Love you.
Bye, bye,
See,
Judy.
congratulations.
Love.
Judy, you're amazing.
Yeah, and the writing was fantastic.
Everything. But let me tell you, Judy, oh my God.
Oh,
Yes,
thank you.
yes. I was telling Maria Conchita.
You have a
I know.
Maria,
Oh my gosh.
I
Thank
know
you.
her, and she's amazing.
Oh.
Everything was when it was like crying, it was crying. When it was like a badass, you were a badass. When you were like, oh my God, I know he's in, and I'm okay because he's defending me. So it was right. Amazing.
Thank
Amazing.
you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Guys,
Where are you guys?
amazing.
Are you guys in Venezuela?
No,
Oh.
in LA.
Oh, I thought you had like the special Venezuelan powdered
No,
chocolate.
I
So I thought
can't
that's
go.
why you were there.
I can't go to Venezuela. They would put me in jail.
That's
I'm
yeah,
a big
no.
activator against them. So
Oh.
I land, they take me
I
to
was
jail.
confused. Okay, then I was
Glad you're
confused
glad
by
you're
the
not in
powdered
Venezuela
Venezuelan
jail.
chocolate.
What?
I said, I'm glad you're not in jail in
Oh,
Venezuela. I'm so ready to
yes.
watch the movie.
I'm here at home in Beverly Hills with Cookie and my 2 cats. And with my
Oh,
cousin. And
yeah.
Rita, who's a big singer from Venezuela. And also an amazing hair and makeup. Amazing. Yeah.
Anytime you need me, I will work with you.
All
And
right.
I'll be the happiest person.
Good.
Yes.
Bye. So nice to meet you.
Blessings.
Bye. Nice to see you.
Bye.
Maria.
Bye. Judy, love
Bye.
Love you. Love you. That was
Okay,
incredible.
We
I
As
love
you can
that.
see, Maria is a riot. So
She's the best.
we have some more student questions, but I just want to quickly mention, in case you didn't see it, that VJ Foster wrote you guys a note.
Oh, yeah.
saying that he loves working with Tyler and the team, and the chance to improv a bit with the wonderful, awesome Judy Greer. Pet Miracle, that's a good name. And a big thank you to all the Blumhouse folks and the mad evil Eisenberg brothers for a fun story script. So
BJ, you
much
saw
love to all of you, and keep kicking butt. And now let's go over to Liam Luffren, who is actually was one of my student workers. Let me see if I can get you over here, Liam. All right.
Hey.
So my question is, it seems like a lot of the newer Blumhouse movies, whether it be The Invisible Man, kind of focusing on domestic abuse, or this movie with anxiety, or following different social and emotional issues to serve as the horror movie antagonists. And I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about that writing process. Maybe it's just because I'm a kid in film school, but I feel like when I hear I'm watching a movie about anxiety, it's the last thing I want to do is watch that movie. But I feel like it was handled really well in this movie, and using like the dog to kind of manifest that, I thought worked super well. And maybe some of the struggles you had, or how you approached it in the writing phase.
Oh man, that's super nice. We knew that we wanted to make a movie about anxiety, and it was very lucky for us that Blumhouse has always been good about kind of tying social issues into their filmmaking. And so, you know, it kind of was a good fit, but at the same time, you know, Will and I wanted to do it in a palatable way. We didn't want to beat anybody over the head with a lecture about what it's like, you know, to have anxiety. So the dog as a metaphor seemed really kind of, it made sense to us, especially as an anxiety dog.
I think horror in general just does that kind of stuff really well, you know, creating metaphors, heightening situations to kind of reveal a larger truth or a larger relatable experience. But I think that like Get Out, for example, just kind of like blew that wide open with Blumhouse. And I think that's why you're seeing probably a lot more people like trying to tackle real issues in movies that, you know, at the same time can still be accessible and entertaining.
And, you know, there's always been, or not always, I don't know, but, you know, there's the metaphor of the black dog that is depression, that it's always, you know, always there. And we didn't even think about that, you know, while we were scripting this, because we wanted it to be an anxiety dog that could literally kind of make your anxieties disappear. But I do think that a dog as somebody's shadow that does kind of follow you around is a good, it makes sense as a metaphor for a mental illness.
Yeah. So did you start with the more of like the story around the dog, or knowing that you wanted to do something about anxiety, or was it more of a mix of both?
Will?
We have different, you know, depending on the project, they all start in different ways. Sometimes it's a character, sometimes it's a concept. This one, it was the concept. It was that like high concept idea, but we knew that we could do something with it because it spoke to us in a personal way. So we know what anxiety is like. We know what dealing with that is like. And so we therefore thought like, okay, we have something to say with this. It's not just a silly, fun idea. There's a movie here and there's a character here.
And we could have that kind of B-movie fun, like Little Shop of Horrors, the 1986 one, was a huge kind of be careful what you wish for story that really inspired us about like, you know, this plant can bring Seymour's all of his like dreams to life, but at what cost, you know? And so we liked that as a jumping off point, but we wanted to balance that B-movie kind of camp, which Tyler does so well, like that balance between, you know, there are campier moments and then also still kind of digging deep into the social issues angle.
Yeah, and that's actually something that Blumhouse is kind of like, you know, not shying away from. Like I think there's a lot of like, you know, like if you look back on like the history of horror, like you used to have to hide, you know, what the movie's really about, like pretty deep in the, you know, like you think of like a Night of the Living Dead or whatever. If that's really about like, you know, civil rights and like, you know,
right,
war, Vietnam and all these things, that's hidden pretty well, you know, like whereas like Blumhouse has done so many of these and is like bold enough that they kind of let you kind of like wear it on your sleeve a little bit more and are proud to make movies that say something, you know, and that's fun.
Yeah, thank you so much. Great answers.
Thanks, Liam.
Okay, so I want to go over to Zachary Thurman, and just to let you know, Zachary, that Will and Marcy aren't here in the panelist side anymore, so I figure you probably just want to either restate some of this or just tailor your question for Judy. And let's just make sure you're not having any problems here, Zach.
Oh.
Hey.
Hey, can you see me now?
Oh, hi.
Yes, sir.
Hey, guys. Oh, my gosh. Great film. I can't get over it. Tyler, Will, Judy, Aaron. I lost it multiple times. I was laughing. I was scared. It was a brilliant blend of comedy and horror.
Thank you.
So I kind of wanted to ask a few questions, really. Judy, I'm a fan of yours from 13 Going on 30 all the way to The Village. And I was wondering, working in a genre like comedy and horror, was there something different in your prep or in working in that genre versus working in just a pure genre like comedy and horror?
Well, I sort of, the way I work in general, partly out of laziness, but it's worked for me so far, is to not really prepare for a role, like thinking in terms of what I'm doing, like to not say like, this is a comedy, so I have to make it funny. So when I prepare, I'm going to really prepare a comedy version of this scene. Like I try to just like be honest with the scene. And then I rely very heavily on my directors at work. I really need my director to manage the tone of what I'm doing. So like, hopefully I get really good ones, and they give me great direction, which I did with Tyler and in those other movies you mentioned. But, sometimes you get on set and after a couple of days, you're like, oh, I'm going to need to really manage this myself. Like this person maybe doesn't have the greatest sense of this project. And that has happened sometimes, but mostly I think it's more fun just to like play the scene honestly. And it all works out in the moment. Like, the vibe on set, the people that you're working with, the way the crew is acting, like it all lends itself to whichever direction you're going in. Like when you're making a comedy, everyone's like kind of having fun and everyone's like, am I allowed to swear? Like we're all like, fucking around and stuff. And so then you naturally just like make your scene really funny. And then, when it's time to be scary, like it's darker on set and everyone's more quiet and you're like, it's getting a little scarier right now. So then that just helps too. Like I'm lazy, I guess is my short answer.
Well, is there anything like, like you coolly explaining the stunt nipple earlier? Is there anything like prepping yourself during that time? Like, are you going into it thinking, this is hilarious, let me laugh it out right now? Or do you?
Oh, I wish I was. I'm bad at breaking character. I'm really bad at it. I'm sure every editor that has ever cut anything I've ever done has been like, wow, really not one take you did without laughing, Judy. Like I am not that professional, but I do, you do kind of have to psych yourself up for things. I would say more when you have, like budget and time. Like budget means you have less time. So when you have less time, you can't mess around as much as maybe you would if you're doing a Marvel movie and you have all the time in the world and like it's just like a party and you're shooting like a page a day. So you're like, oh, let's do a fun practical joke that'll take an hour to clean up. Like you don't really have.
This was
that
basically
luxury.
the same thing.
It was
as a Marvel
so
movie.
similar. It was just like Ant-Man. Yeah. So then maybe in those moments I'm more conscious of like, if there's something I'm afraid to do or concerned about doing, I'm more like, you better just do it. Like, don't overthink it. Don't freak out. Just do it, because we don't have time for you to be scared of the spider or not want to jump in the ocean or like whatever the scene is. So I don't know. I like to maybe be mindful of that the budget and the time.
and Tyler, that's kind of same question is, a lot of times I'm a big horror comedy fan and all my shorts have been horror comedy. And I find it really difficult to not laugh behind the camera a lot of times because the actor or actress is bringing it. Do you ever feel that way, and how do you address that?
I tend to come off pretty serious to people. I don't know why. I think I just kind of have that sort of like like especially like when I was earlier in my career, I think I was like still obviously in the process of like learning how to talk to actors and how you treat people creatively. And so like I would very rarely give like feedback if things were going well. And then people would just be like, how's it going? Like, I have no idea, you know, and they get really paranoid about it because they look at me and I look pissed off or something, even though I'm fine, you know. But I did notice the gremlin behind you. So, you know, that's one tip to the horror comedy.
Oh yeah. You know, just so you know, all your nods to gremlins, I found them throughout the film. I don't know if you fully noticed that you guys had done that, but there were a few nods that were like on par. They were fantastic.
Well, I'm a big Joe Dante fan, so that's and Christopher Columbus fan. But yeah. Well, I mean, and I think Judy's you know, maybe like being a bit self-deprecating about like the type of you know. Like my experience working with you, Judy, was that you're very aware of like what was going on, like with your character, like in terms of like where you were in your arc, and when something wasn't running, ringing true, you brought it up, you know, and we were able to get in front of it, and that was like often I'm kind of, you know, like dealing with a lot of other like creative or like things that are like, you know, like camera placement and whatever, where it requires a certain amount of other types of discussion, and so it always like I think when you kind of have like collaboration where you're okay kind of like talking through those things, and I think the problems really come when like somebody doesn't feel right about something, or it's not feeling natural, and there's like no time to deal with it. People are just like, oh, you just go with it or whatever, and then you end up with something that becomes a problem, you know. But I mean, this time around, even though we were, you know, we had a pretty tight schedule. Like I think we did have enough time to, you know, like to do everything the way it was written, because we kind of made those decisions early of like what we were going to cut, and like, you know, how, like, you know, if we have these 30 speaking parts, which you know, 20 of them can go, you know, like, you know, and whatever, and you can and if you kind of plan it, you can get in front of a lot of that stuff, I think.
Alex, did you want me to?
I'll switch you back over.
Gotcha.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
You know, so speaking of Zachary's Gremlins reference, I can't believe we haven't even talked about another of the great cinematic treasures from the 1980s, Mr. Steve Guttenberg.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
I mean, how does it?
Got lucky.
I would say, how has it not happened all the time? But
yeah,
that's how I feel. By the way, talking about breaking character and laughing, and like, I could not keep a straight face when he was on set. We laughed in every single scene, even like when like Tyler would be like, cut, the whole crew would start laughing. The crew was laughing during takes. I mean, he's so funny, and it's, you know,
and so nice.
Oh my God. And so like, and also like sweet, and like, so I just like want to work with him in everything I ever do. And he's so funny, and you're like, oh yeah, that's why you're Steve Guttenberg, because you're so funny.
You know what's funny though about like Steve's role as Don? I think that's one of the parts that kind of turned out the most different than how we had originally envisioned it, and we're not sorry about that at all. Like, we're like really thrilled about what Steve wound up doing to that role. I think that at first we had Don much more kind of surly and like jaded and crusty, you know, and
Crusty.
Crusty. And I think that like what Steve did was almost a little bit like aging hippie, of just trying to like a bit new agey and naughty and like a little bit silly, and we didn't know that, like Will and I didn't know that until, you know, the day we were seeing it on set.
Yeah, it was so different from what we had expected. And I think, to Tyler's credit too, Tyler let him go and like be fully the character that he brought, and gave them that room to explore so that they could improvise and find new things. And I think like that was really cool to watch as a writer, was seeing something come to life in a totally different way that worked, and then seeing that kind of be nurtured into the amazing performance.
I mean, the bottom line is also like Steve Guttenberg went to Juilliard, like, so, or I believe he went to Juilliard or Carnegie Mellon or something. So like, trust Steve Guttenberg, you know, like, don't trust yourself, just trust Steve.
Well, totally. And it's funny because you got like the set and everything is kind of like really designed amongst like there's like leather books and he has like these Scotch glasses and stuff. Like it was really kind of like we're pushing it into this kind of like really like old journalists with their tie undone kind of like Bernstein kind of area. And he kind of like once he got in that environment, he was like, I'm just gonna chill back on this couch, like, and just kind of like puts his feet up and just kind of like, like he really kind of like made the space his own, and then kind of has this like easygoing attitude, and even those like the other thing is we shot, 3 days I think with Steven. But
one day with Steve.
No.
Oh no, he was there more than one day. We did the phone call one day.
Oh yeah, you're right. Sorry.
Yeah, but like he essentially had to shoot 3 things to a very different tone back to back. Which was like he had that weird scene where it's like half improv of him, like, when he's like trying to like be like, hey, we're getting sold, but it's okay, guys, you're losing your health insurance, but hey, like he kind of had this like fun sort of light touch to it, and then then next he has like this very like down to earth kind of like scene where he convinces her to get the dog. And then it's like up to 11, like where they're yelling at each other, like, so it was, seeing him kind of go through all these different, like changes and stuff. And it was, it was great. And also like just seeing like out of the box, like Judy and him had like great chemistry. And I was like, oh, this is gonna be a fun day, and that's the best when you can get these talented actors kind of just in a room and everyone's on the same page. And,
I love him.
Okay, I want to just take maybe 1 or 2 more. We've got Alexis Patton, and Alexis, I'll move you over. By the way, while Alexis is getting set up, Judy, is that a Planet of the Apes reference in the Bright Eyes frame you've got back there?
You'd have to ask my husband. I was at that concert, but I do have behind me, I don't know if you can see, right there, I have these little 2 ape bride and groom. It's an ape bride and groom porcelain statue that was my wedding cake topper.
Awesome.
Yeah. So the plant, actually, there's a weird up here above this television. There's this ape. Can you see it? It's like a ape. It's called the Ape Ballet.
Let me spotlight your video. Maybe we can.
Okay. Ooh. Yeah.
It's like the reindeer on the roof.
It is. I can probably even like now I'm just showing my house off, but like it's like these apes.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Okay.
Oh, that's old school ape.
Alexis, I'm so sorry you have to sit through this, but also I bought that there's you guys will know for sure, there's a comic book store in the Valley that when Planet of the Apes they did like a Planet of the Apes like art gallery showing. There's a gallery attached to the store and they had all this ape art, and I bought that for my husband for his birthday. There's also another, okay, I'm gonna stop talking about apes. Hi Alexis.
Hi,
Alexis with the revolver in the drawing room.
Yes, you are. You're so cool.
This is the background from Knives Out. Do you recognize it?
Oh my, it's Clue. Yeah, it's like Knives Out, but yes, it's so good.
So I have questions for the writers, the director, and Judy. Judy, I have been a fan of yours ever since seeing you in Adaptation and 13 going on 30. And I had a very similar question to what Zachary asked you. So I was wondering about, you're such an incredible comedic actress. I mean, I go to see films just to see you perform. And how is it difficult going between genres at all, or is what attracts you to horror? Because this is actually the first horror film that I've ever been able to sit through. So thank you guys for an incredible film.
I'm like learning to fall in love with horror. I realized recently that like making a horror film is and this is a horror comedy film, but when I was shooting Halloween, and that is like straight up horror, like, well, I think, it was so scary even to me, and I was in it, but I found that it was like as fun as making a comedy. Like when you do like the crazy thing, the big scare, and then the director's like cut, like everyone's laughing, everyone's like, woo, yeah, that was awesome, that was so scary, that was so nuts. And I'm like realizing that there's like the same amount of energy on set, and the stories you're telling, like we were talking about earlier in the Q&A, like are getting very sophisticated within the genre. So I don't feel like, oh, we're doing a horror movie. It's like, oh, we're doing a story about mental illness and it's in this genre. So everything is just getting so much more sophisticated. And then Ryan Turek, who works at Blumhouse and he produced the Halloween movies, he's been sort of teaching me about horror. He's been giving me lessons and telling me about like why, you know, the great ones are so great. And it's always because there is a real like underlying theme that is relevant to all of us, and that has made me fall in love with the genre.
Oh, well, thank you for an incredible performance
again.
Oh,
thank you for watching it with us.
And for Erin and Will, as far as writing a script like this, I kept waiting for when Maria Conchita Alonso was talking about the ice cream they were eating. You know the scene where they're eating ice cream and the jogger goes by? I kept thinking that the next scene that we would see the jogger getting mauled by Chico, you know?
Yeah.
And I was wondering, and so I kept waiting for that scene. But how do you, when you're outlining a horror film, how do you decide, you know, how many killings there are going to be, and you know, what kinds of scenarios you're going to put the killings in? How do you generate that kind of diversity?
Yeah, we wanted there to be a fake out with, you know, with some of them, you know, especially when Annie, for example, at the end says that she's trying to get pregnant. You know, you think that Chico is about to go in for the kill then and there, and it turns out that the kill is misguided, but there is kind of a feel to it, like with the jogger. First of all, that was something that we changed like on set, right, Tyler? I mean, it was used to be a person on a scooter. Before that, it was like somebody on like in line for a donut truck. Thinking through whether or not the jogger is going to get killed was just so not on our mind. It was just like, how do we make this work? Like with somebody that can just run by.
But that scene though was like, that person was never intended to be killed, because I think the way Aaron and I thought about it was like the kills kind of happen in connection to her character's arc. So like the first kill, you know, she doesn't even know what happens really. And then the next one she does, and she becomes a little bit more complicit. She is going to bury the body. The next one, she's all in. She rewards Ruben afterwards with the treat, calls him a good boy, and you know, and that's Gutenberg. But then by that point in the movie with the jogger, her character is further along in her journey, and she's taking these treatments. And
I was gonna say those fertility treatments make you crazy.
Right.
Exactly.
So there's this kind of question of, you know, and we kind of wanted to have this maybe red herring of, you know, is this in her mind? And I saw on, you know, in YouTube comments, like calling it right now, the dog isn't real. This is all Judy's anxiety, you know? And it's like, I'm glad that we actually went for the kill.
I love that.
Yeah, right? Like fan theories are very cool. It wasn't the case, but like we did want it to go from being most deserving to objectable, right, or objectionable, and then to not deserving, like Annie, and then of course McKinley's character, to show that Judy's character is full and complicit. You know,
so there's a pacing thing. Obviously, you want kills, you know, every so often, but it's really connected to character. By that point in the movie, the dog reveals himself to fully be an antagonist, basically, and you don't want those next kills to happen. So yeah.
Oh wow, that is so cool. Thank you. And one just quick question for Tyler. Tyler, someone mentioned that you'd been an editor before, and I'm wondering what was your sort of threshold moment where you went from, okay, I'm gonna focus on editing to, okay, now I'm going to focus on directing?
I would say that like I kind of like when I started making movies like in middle school or whatever, like I was always kind of like making them up and shooting them and editing them myself, and so I kind of always thought of myself just as like a general filmmaker, because then I would help other people and just like whatever that meant. Like sometimes I'm holding the camera and sometimes I'm cutting it because they don't know how to use the program or whatever, you know. And so I was a real like all-purpose filmmaker, like you know, growing up in high school, and then by the time I got to like a more organized state where like there were jobs and I'm doing one job and not this other job, you know, like then I found that I was like editing was just a great way to help people out, and also it's a good way to make a living, because it's usually late enough in the production process that they've already spent some money, so they have to keep spending more money, or else the movie's not going to get done. Whereas writers often get a little more screwed because it's like so early in the process that no one wants to be the first money that's spent. So like they're always asking writers to like do work for free. And there's like this technical component to it. Like, you know, like you have to know how to use a computer, and you need to know, you need to like, you know, math and rhythm and all these things. It's like cinematography, you know, but like where they can't like there's a technical component that's like a mystery, you know, and so therefore people are more okay kind of you know, like spending money on it, and therefore I realized that I could support myself as as an editor out of school, and that would be the path of least resistance. But then it became really helpful because you're sitting shotgun like for the whole thing. Like, you know, you're sitting there like literally sewing the movie together, often with the director, and you get to like see the mistakes that were made. You hear like, you know, the things that went wrong. You hear the problems, and you can learn from that, like as a director yourself. And so like the whole time for like, you know, like essentially 5 years after school, like after film school, I was you know, editing full time, and the whole time I was also writing and directing like shorts on the side and stuff like that, and just waiting for the opportunity. And then when like the producers of my first short or my first feature were people that I met as producers on things that I was an editor on. So there was no real like defined moment. I kind of you know, and even after that, like after I directed my first feature, I went and caught a Lifetime movie in Vancouver because I needed to make rent. You know what I mean? Like there's like the idea that there's like a stop. You know, you stop in one moment, and I still love it too. Like I still like even after I directed my second movie, I edited and produced a movie for a friend of mine. You know, like and I would encourage people to kind of try and, you know, like focus on whatever you love. But like if you have more than one like passion, you know, like support each other. You know, like, you know, there's no reason not to. A lot of hours in the day. You know.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much.
We're trying to make rent. Meanwhile, Will and I work at a cupcake cafe. That's how we get our kind of our second income.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I just wanted to take a second to read something from Marina Valley before wrapping it. And this note is, thank you for letting me be a part of bringing this story to the screen. The whole team was amazing to work with, but it was a special treat and so much fun to work with the lovely and wonderful Judy Greer and the talented Tyler MacIntyre. Congratulations to all. Marina Valley, aka Millie.
Millie.
So thank you all so much for joining us and sharing all these stories about making the movie. Thank you so much for making the movie that celebrates the underappreciated Pet Appreciation Day.
Not for long.
I can't wait to know what else you pull out of the calendar for us. So get on it. I want to know what crazy holidays we missed in the, you know, dog days of August.
Thank you for hosting this and for all the people who watched it and hung around for our Q&A. And I know it's weird times, but I thought, like, you know, it couldn't have been premiering at a better time because we all need some levity, and I'm really proud of it. And I'm really proud of Tyler and Will and Aaron and everyone at Blumhouse. It was such a fun experience. I hope I get to do it again.
Us too. This was like the time of our lives. Like we can't believe that we got a movie made, and that we got a movie made with Tyler directing and starring Judy. It's so a real and then Will gets to speak at USC, his alma mater. Like that is a crazy.
You made it, Will.
Will, look at that. Man. All that tuition, it's worth it.
Worth it.
Thank you for having us, Alex.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Alex.
Hope to see you guys in person sometime.
Hope so soon. Be safe, everybody.
Bye. Hug your dog.
You.
Stay in your